Lindsay, thank you for joining me. Lindsay is the CEO and co-founder at Lamb, and Lamb is in Stockholm, Sweden, although Lindsay is from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So we need to hear the personal story on how you ended up in Stockholm with a co-working space. But thank you for joining me. And we have to hit immediately on the fact that today's your 1-year anniversary.
Yeah,
So exciting.
I can't believe it. It's so crazy. We opened our doors 1 year ago today. And it was really funny because on the day that we opened, me and my co-founder, Julia, and our community manager, Johanna, we were standing at the top of the stairs waiting for the first person to come in. Over in the staircase like creepers, like, hello, welcome. And you could see on the first person's face, like, hello, am I in the right place? And ironically, that first person who signed up on May 3rd is in the building today.
That's awesome.
Her company. They are currently doing a hip hop yoga class as part of a team retreat.
A hip hop yoga class. So yeah, we have to start there. And I have to say that I look at your website constantly because I get lots of folks in my startup school like you who want to serve women and have maybe found your space, or as soon as I mention it, they're obsessed with your brand.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So we do a lot of loving on your branding and the fact that you guys really invested in that right from the beginning. And I think that's somewhat unique. You know, you just committed to it, because I'm sometimes a little in the camp on like, just put up a super simple website. You're going to want to change everything in a year anyway. But you guys really invested. So before we kind of go down a rabbit hole, tell us a little bit your personal story. How did you end up in Sweden? What did you do for work? And then how did you come to open a co-working space a year ago today?
It is such a windy road. And if you'd asked me, 12 years ago when I moved to Sweden, or 20 years ago when I started my career, if I'd be opening a co-working space in Sweden, like I would have been like, nah, you crazy. What are you talking about? So I started out my career as a journalist. So I used to work for the Associated Press in New York, and then I moved to Bangkok. And when I was working in Bangkok on the Asia Pacific desk as an editor, I went for a little weekend trip to Hong Kong with some friends. And that's where I bumped into my now husband, who is Swedish. He and I bumped into each other at the bottom of a staircase in
this is a crazy story.
Kong, which is like the party district of Hong Kong, because my friend wanted to talk to his friend. So I got roped into being her wingman. And we started talking and we hit it off and started dating long distance. He was studying in Macau and I was living in Bangkok, and we were flying back and forth to see each other for a few months. And then he finished his studies and he was going to come to Bangkok and stay with me for a while. And then he had to go back to Sweden. And this was like 4 months into our relationship. I mean, we really hadn't been together that long, but we loved each other, and it had moved quickly. And he was like, I have to go back to Sweden, and what are we going to do? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go to Sweden. So at 26, I packed up all my stuff and quit my job. It was my dream job too. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to pick up being a journalist in Sweden. It was pretty unlikely, but I looked at all the people on the desk, particularly the women. And journalism is an incredible profession, but it is also one where it is really easy to give up a lot of other parts of your life for the work. And I saw for a lot of women on the desk that they had given up the opportunity to have partners and families, and their work was their life. And that was not a sacrifice I was willing to make. And especially given the choice between, like, it was right in front of me, this job that I'd dreamt about, that I'd worked really hard for. It was the only company that I wanted to work for. And then this man. And I just thought, if I don't do this, I could regret this for the rest of my life. Because the next step for a young journalist, like 25 on the Asia Pacific desk, you are definitely getting embedded. You're definitely going to Kabul or Islamabad or West Africa. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do
Go to
this.
Sweden.
And I moved to Sweden. And I showed up in Sweden with my big old bags and immediately moved into my now husband's parents' apartment, which was like 900 square feet. And we lived there for 2 months because it's like impossible to find
with his parents.
Yes.
You lived, oh, wow.
So I walked off the plane, like drove up to his parents' apartment, like, here are my bags. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Hedenskog. So nice to meet you. And then moved into their house.
I mean, if you can survive that, right?
I mean, I feel like that is like the ultimate test of a relationship. Can you survive living with their parents when you don't know each other that well?
Totally. Right. Ever, but specifically when you just met them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then sort of fast forward, I spent a few years working in, communications and writing jobs. I wasn't really happy and I really struggled to get a footing in. Stockholm is a very insular city. You really need to know people. You really need to be connected. I wasn't connected to anybody. So I struggled. And at 30, like 3 years into being in Sweden, 3 years, I was working in a coffee shop and serving cappuccinos and trying and failing to speak Swedish. And I was also a tour guide. And I was greeting people coming off the cruise ships doing their Scandinavian cruise. And I was on the boat or I was on the bus, in the front of the bus, like, and on your left is the Royal Palace.
This is such a good story.
Because of a fire that originated in the ballroom. I mean,
you do have a great voice, Lindsay.
Thank you. Thank you. I can tell you the tips were abysmal. I remember there was some American couple that came off the boat and they put 50 cents in my hand. And I was like, this is horrible. It was also, I remember this, May 5th, and it was snowing. And I was like, what have I done with my life? This has all gone off the rails. This is terrible. What did I do? But then I was fortunate enough to meet a man who was running his own agency at the time, and he was looking for an English language writer. And in Stockholm, it was pretty early days. Most of the brands were still writing in Swedish, not in English. Now that's completely different. Now every company.
I've thought of that. When I get your newsletter, it's in English.
It's in English.
Yeah.
I mean, every company is desperate for English language writers. And as that trend increased, my career success increased. So I worked with him. We ran the agency together. We worked for a lot of big companies doing all kinds of different copywriting and brand communications projects and marketing strategy. And I got to work for some really big companies. Like I was the lead copywriter, on the IKEA catalog, the global IKEA catalog for 2 years.
Wow.
So that was super fun. I got to sit in a room with the designers and come up with the room sets and what's the story. And I traveled a lot down to IKEA's capital, Älmhult, which is like the smallest, puniest little town in the whole world. It's not very exciting. It's just all IKEA. And then I got to work with like Volvo and Nikon and H&M and Absolute Vodka. And I got to travel a lot, especially with the IKEA catalog. I went to the Comoros Islands, which are off the coast of Madagascar. I got to go to New York a couple times to do some stories there.
You were back in the game.
It was great. It was amazing. I felt like, yeah, here we go. And then I was feeling itchy to do something else and feeling like I wanted to move on. And I ended up taking a job as head of content for a fintech company and had an incredibly intensive 1.5 years where I was very challenged because the environment that I was in was a bit toxic. The pace was unreasonably fast. And I'm somebody who has a very high capacity for work.
Yeah.
I can do a lot in the time that I have. And even for me, I was feeling like I'm going to hit the wall. Like, I can't do this. And I remember it was the summer of 2019. We were working on this huge project. It was amazing. It was like this big report. We'd commissioned it from YouGov. There was all this data. We needed to synthesize it. It was really about providing something of value to our customers. And it was going to be this amazing production. And it's just started ballooning and growing and growing and growing. And I went to my boss and I was like, I have to raise the red flag here. Like, the time that we have to do this is not reasonable. Like, we can't, if I'm going to do this, I have to get into the office at 5:30 in the morning and I have to leave at 7 p.m.